Imagine a wall so long that it stretches across mountains, deserts, and valleys. A wall so massive that it can be seen from space. Imagine a country so old that it was already ancient when Rome was just a small village. Imagine a civilization that invented paper, that invented printing, that invented gunpowder, that invented the compass. Without these four inventions, the modern world would look completely different today. Imagine emperors so powerful that they were called the sons of heaven. Emperors who commanded armies of millions. Emperors who built palaces so grand that ordinary people were forbidden to enter. This civilization did not last 100 years. It did not last 500 years. It lasted over 4,000 years. This is China, the oldest continuous civilization on the face of the earth. Today, we will travel through thousands of years of Chinese history. We will meet emperors and warriors. We will discover inventions that changed the world. We will walk along the Great Wall. We will enter the Forbidden City. We will witness the rise and fall of mighty dynasties. This is not just history. This is the story of 1/4 of all humanity. Are you ready? Let us begin. Before we begin the history, we must understand the land. China is a very large country. It is one of the largest countries in the world. China is in East Asia. China shares borders with 14 different countries. No other country in the world shares borders with more countries than China. China has many different landscapes. In the west, there are the highest mountains in the world. These are the Himalayan mountains. In the north, there is a vast, cold desert. This desert is called the Gobi Desert. In the east and south, there are fertile plains and river valleys. These fertile areas are where most people in China live. China has two great rivers. The first river is called the Yellow River. In Chinese, it is called Huanghe. The Yellow River is in northern China. The river gets its name from the yellow soil it carries. This yellow soil is very fertile. Ancient Chinese civilization first developed along the Yellow River. The second great river is the Yangtze River. In Chinese, it is called Changjiang. The Yangtze River is in central and eastern China. It is the longest river in Asia. It is the third longest river in the entire world. These two rivers gave life to the Chinese people, just as the Nile gave life to ancient Egypt, just as the Tigris and Euphrates gave life to Mesopotamia. Rivers were the highways of ancient civilization, and China's rivers gave birth to one of the greatest civilizations in human history.
People have lived in China for an incredibly long time. Scientists have found evidence of human ancestors in China dating back nearly 2 million years. About 500,000 years ago, an early human species lived in a cave near modern Beijing. We call this species Peking man. Peking man used simple stone tools. Peking man used fire. Over thousands of years, modern humans developed in China. They settled along the river valleys. They began farming around 7,000 years ago. They grew millet in the north. They grew rice in the south. As farming villages grew, legends developed about the very first rulers of China. The Chinese call these early rulers the 3 sovereigns and the 5 emperors. These are legendary figures. They may not have been real people, but their stories are deeply important to Chinese culture. One of the most famous legendary figures is the Yellow Emperor. His name was Huang Di. Chinese tradition says Huang Di lived around 2700 BCE. Huang Di is said to have invented many things. He is said to have invented writing, medicine, and silk production. He is considered the ancestor of all Chinese people. Even today, Chinese people sometimes call themselves the descendants of Huang Di. Another legendary figure is Emperor Shun. Shun was known for his wisdom and his virtue. He was a perfect ruler who always thought of his people first. Then there was the great Yu. Yu is famous for controlling the floods of the Yellow River. Yu worked for 13 years to control the floods. The story says he was so dedicated that he passed by his own home 3 times during these 13 years, but he never stopped to go inside. He never stopped to see his own family, because his duty to the people was more important. These stories about the legendary emperors taught the Chinese people important values. Values like hard work, duty, wisdom, and caring for the common people.
Around 1600 BCE, a dynasty called the Shang dynasty rose to power. The Shang dynasty is the first Chinese dynasty confirmed by both ancient texts and archaeological evidence. The Shang people were advanced for their time. They built large cities. They had a system of writing. This early Chinese writing was carved on animal bones and turtle shells. These are called oracle bones. Oracle bones were used for telling the future. Priests would ask questions about the future. Will the harvest be good this year? Will we win the battle? Will the king recover from his illness? Then the priest would apply heat to the bone or shell. The bone would crack. The priest would read the cracks to find the answer from the gods. The answers and the questions were written on the bones. This is how we know so much about Shang dynasty life today. The Shang people also made extraordinary bronze objects. Pots, cups, and weapons made of bronze were created with incredible skill. Some of these bronze objects still exist in museums today. They are astonishingly beautiful. The Shang kings were very powerful. They were seen as the link between the living world and the spirit world. They performed rituals and ceremonies to communicate with their ancestors. Ancestor worship was very important in ancient China. The Shang believed their dead ancestors could influence events in the living world, so they regularly offered food, wine, and gifts to their ancestors. The Shang dynasty lasted for about 500 years. Then a new dynasty rose to take its place. Around 1046 BCE, a powerful group called the Zhou people overthrew the Shang dynasty. The Zhou leaders needed to explain why they had the right to rule. Why did they deserve to be king? They came up with a very important idea. This idea is called the Mandate of Heaven. The Mandate of Heaven said this: Heaven, meaning the gods and the universe, gives the right to rule to a good and virtuous leader. If a leader is good, heaven supports him. The crops grow well, the people are happy, the country is peaceful. But if a leader becomes bad, corrupt, or cruel, heaven removes its support. Floods happen, famines happen, rebellions happen, and eventually the bad ruler falls. This idea was extremely clever. It explained why new dynasties were allowed to take power. If you overthrew a dynasty, it meant heaven had already withdrawn its support from the old rulers, and heaven had given its support to you. This concept of the mandate of heaven remained powerful in Chinese thinking for over 3,000 years, even into the 20th century. The Zhou dynasty was the longest dynasty in Chinese history. It lasted for almost 800 years. But during the later Zhou period, China fell into chaos. Local lords became more powerful than the central king. They fought each other constantly. This chaotic period is called the Warring States period. It was a time of constant war, but it was also a time of extraordinary intellectual achievement. During the chaos of the Warring States period, great thinkers arose in China. These thinkers tried to answer important questions. How should society be organized? How should a ruler govern? How should a person live a good life? This period of philosophical thinking is called the 100 Schools of Thought. Many different ideas competed with each other. The most important philosopher was a man named Kang Kui. In the West, we call him Confucius. Confucius lived from approximately 551 BCE to 479 BCE. Confucius believed that society should be based on relationships. There are 5 key relationships: the relationship between ruler and subject, the relationship between parent and child, the relationship between husband and wife, the relationship between older brother and younger brother, the relationship between friend and friend. Confucius said that in each relationship, both people have responsibilities. A ruler must be just and caring. Then the subjects must be loyal and obedient. A parent must be loving and wise. Then the child must be respectful and obedient. The most important value in Confucianism is Ren. Ren means benevolence, kindness, or humaneness. It means caring for others. It means treating others the way you want to be treated. Confucius also believed strongly in education. He believed that any person, regardless of their birth, could become virtuous through education and self-improvement. Confucius spent his life teaching these ideas. He had many students. His ideas were written down by his students in a book called the Analects. The ideas of Confucius shaped Chinese civilization more deeply than almost any other thinker. His influence can still be felt in China and across East Asia today. Another important philosopher was Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu founded a philosophy called Taoism or Taoism. Taoism teaches people to live in harmony with the Tao. The Tao means the way. The Tao is the natural order of the universe. For many years, the Warring States period continued. 7 major states fought each other constantly. Then, one state became stronger than all the others. This state was called Qin. The Qin state was in the west of China. The Qin state followed the philosophy of legalism, strict laws, harsh punishments, absolute obedience to the ruler. In 221 BCE, the king of Qin defeated all the other states, one by one. He united all of China under his rule. This king gave himself a new title. He called himself Qin Shi Huang. This means First Emperor of Qin. He was the very first emperor of a unified China, and he was one of the most powerful rulers in human history. Qin Shi Huang made enormous changes to China. He standardized measurements across China. The same units of measurement were used everywhere. This made trade much easier. He standardized the Chinese writing system. Before unification, different regions used slightly different writing systems. Now there was one standard system. This helped unite the country. He standardized the width of wagon wheels. This may sound like a small thing, but it meant that wagon wheels fit perfectly into the roads and tracks across all of China. It made transportation and trade much more efficient. He built a massive network of roads and canals. These connected all parts of his empire. He also connected and extended existing walls in the north of China. These walls were built to keep out northern invaders. This was the beginning of what would eventually become the Great Wall of China. Qin Shi Huang was also ruthless and cruel. He burned books that disagreed with his philosophy. He buried alive scholars who criticized him. He forced hundreds of thousands of people to work on his massive building projects. Many of these workers died. Qin Shi Huang was obsessed with immortality. He desperately wanted to live forever. He sent expeditions to search for a potion of immortality. He consumed special pills that his advisors said would make him live forever. These pills actually contained mercury. Mercury is a deadly poison. Historians believe these mercury pills may have contributed to his death. Qin Shi Huang died in 210 BCE. He was only 49 years old. Before he died, he prepared an extraordinary tomb for himself. He wanted to be protected even in death. His tomb was guarded by an army. Not a real army, a terracotta army. Over 8,000 life-size clay soldiers were buried near his tomb. Each soldier had a unique face. Each soldier was painted in bright colors. They carried real weapons. They stood in battle formation, ready to protect their emperor forever. This terracotta army was hidden underground for over 2,000 years. In 1974, farmers digging a well accidentally discovered it. It is now considered one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in human history. After Qin Shi Huang died, China fell into chaos. His empire collapsed quickly. Civil war broke out. But from this chaos, a new dynasty emerged. This was the Han dynasty. It began in 206 BCE. The Han dynasty was one of the greatest periods in Chinese history. It lasted for over 400 years. The Han dynasty was so important to Chinese identity that even today, the majority ethnic group in China calls themselves the Han people. Under the Han dynasty, China became one of the most powerful empires in the world. At the same time as the Roman Empire ruled in the West, the Han Empire ruled in the East. These were the two superpowers of the ancient world. The Han emperors embraced Confucianism. They created a system where government officials were chosen based on their knowledge and ability. Officials had to pass difficult examinations. These examinations tested knowledge of Confucian texts and other subjects. This examination system was revolutionary. In most countries at this time, powerful positions went to people from powerful families. In Han China, in theory, any intelligent person could become a government official through studying and passing the exams. This system, called the Imperial Examination System, continued in China for almost 2,000 years. The Han Dynasty also greatly expanded Chinese territory. Chinese armies pushed far into Central Asia. China took control of the Silk Road.
The Silk Road was one of the most important trade routes in human history. It was not one single road, it was a network of many roads and sea routes. These routes connected China in the east to the Mediterranean world in the west. Along the Silk Road, merchants carried goods across thousands of kilometers. From China, they carried silk, porcelain, tea, and spices. From the west, they carried gold, silver, glass, and wool. Silk was the most valuable of all Chinese exports. For many centuries, China was the only place in the world that knew how to make silk. This was a closely guarded secret. If anyone tried to smuggle silkworm eggs or the secret of silk production out of China, the punishment was death. Silk was so valuable in the ancient world that it was used as currency. Roman emperors wore Chinese silk. Ancient kings across Asia and Europe treasured Chinese silk. But the Silk Road carried more than just goods. It carried ideas. It carried religions. Buddhism traveled from India to China along the Silk Road. It became one of the most important religions in China. Technologies, art styles, and music also traveled along these routes. The Silk Road made China extraordinarily rich during the Han Dynasty. It connected China to the rest of the world. After the Han Dynasty weakened, China once again fell apart. Three powerful kingdoms competed for control. The first kingdom was Wei. Wei controlled northern China. The second kingdom was Shu Han. Shu Han controlled the southwest. The third kingdom was Wu. Wu controlled the southeast. This period is called the Three Kingdoms period. It lasted from 220 CE to 280 CE. The Three Kingdoms period was a time of constant war and suffering. The population of China dropped dramatically during this period. Millions of people died from war, famine, and disease. But this period also produced some of the greatest stories and legends in Chinese history. The story of the Three Kingdoms is told in a famous Chinese novel. This novel is called Romance of the Three Kingdoms. It is one of the four great classical novels of Chinese literature. The story is full of brilliant military strategists, loyal warriors, and tragic heroes. Characters like Zhuge Liang, the brilliant advisor, Liu Bi, the virtuous leader, Cao Cao, the ambitious and ruthless warlord, Gan Yu, the loyal and brave warrior general. Gan Yu is particularly beloved in Chinese culture. He represents loyalty, righteousness, and bravery. He is worshipped as a god in Chinese temples even today. After more centuries of division and conflict, China was finally reunited by the Sui dynasty. The Sui dynasty was short but important. It reconnected China and built the Grand Canal. The Grand Canal was a massive artificial waterway. It connected northern and southern China. It was one of the greatest engineering projects in human history. Then the Tang dynasty arose. The Tang dynasty lasted from 618 CE to 907 CE. It is considered another golden age of Chinese civilization.
Under the Tang dynasty, China became the most powerful and cosmopolitan empire in the world. Chang'an, the capital city of the Tang dynasty, was one of the largest cities in the world at that time. It had a population of over 1 million people. Merchants, monks, diplomats, and travelers came from across Asia and beyond. The Tang dynasty was famous for its openness. Foreigners were welcomed, new ideas were embraced. Buddhism became extremely important in Chinese culture during this period. Beautiful Buddhist temples and monasteries were built across China. The Tang dynasty also produced some of the greatest poetry in Chinese history. Two poets in particular are considered among the greatest in all of Chinese literature. Their names were Li Bai and Du Fu. Li Bai wrote romantic, joyful, and sometimes wild poetry. He celebrated nature, friendship, wine, and the beauty of life. He is often called the poet immortal. Du Fu wrote more serious, thoughtful poetry. His poems often reflected the suffering of ordinary people during difficult times. He is often called the poet sage. The Tang dynasty also had one of the most remarkable rulers in Chinese history. Her name was Wu Zetian. Wu Zetian was the only woman in Chinese history to rule as empress in her own name. She was intelligent, ruthless, and extremely capable. She expanded the empire. She strengthened the examination system. She was a devoted Buddhist. She ruled for approximately 15 years. Even today, historians debate whether Wu Zetian was a great ruler or a cruel tyrant. The truth is probably that she was both. After the Tang dynasty fell, China went through another period of division. Then the Song dynasty unified much of China in 960 CE. The Song dynasty is famous for an extraordinary explosion of technology and invention. During the Song dynasty, China invented or greatly improved 4 technologies that changed the entire world. The first great invention was printing. Before printing, books had to be copied by hand. This was slow and expensive. Only rich people could own books. During the Song dynasty, movable type printing was invented. Individual characters could be arranged and rearranged. Books could be printed quickly and cheaply. Knowledge spread faster than ever before. This invention eventually reached Europe and transformed the world. The second great invention was gunpowder. The Chinese had actually discovered gunpowder during the Tang dynasty, but during the Song dynasty, gunpowder was first used in weapons. Fire arrows, bombs, and early guns were developed. Gunpowder technology eventually spread west and transformed warfare. The third great invention was the magnetic compass. The compass allowed ships to navigate even when they could not see the stars. This made long ocean voyages possible. The compass eventually made possible the age of exploration. The discovery of the Americas and the circumnavigation of the globe all became possible because of the Chinese compass. The fourth great invention was paper money. Before paper money, people carried heavy metal coins. During the Song dynasty, merchants began using paper certificates as a substitute for coins. This was the world's first paper currency. It made trade much easier and transformed economies. These 4 inventions, printing, gunpowder, compass, and paper money, changed human civilization forever. The Song dynasty was also a time of tremendous economic growth. Cities grew enormous. Trade expanded. A large middle class developed. But the Song dynasty also faced constant military threats. Nomadic peoples from the north constantly threatened Chinese borders. And eventually, one group of northern nomads would conquer all of China.
In the early 13th century, a man was born on the cold steppes north of China. His name at birth was Temujin. He was born into a small, struggling family. His father was poisoned by enemies when he was young. His family was abandoned and left to starve. He was captured and enslaved as a teenager. But Temujin was extraordinary. Through incredible courage, cunning, and strength of will, he survived. He built alliances. He built an army. He conquered one tribe after another. In 1206, all the Mongol tribes came together in a great assembly. They gave Temujin a new title. They called him Genghis Khan. This means universal ruler. Genghis Khan built the most powerful cavalry army the world had ever seen. His soldiers were fast, disciplined, and utterly fearless. Genghis Khan began conquering everything in his path. Central Asia fell. Persia fell. Parts of Eastern Europe fell. Then the Mongols turned their attention to China. China was the greatest prize. The Mongols attacked northern China. City after city fell. Millions of people were killed. Genghis Khan died in 1227 before fully conquering China, but his descendants continued. His grandson, Kublai Khan, finally conquered all of China. In 1271, Kublai Khan declared himself Emperor of China. He established the Yuan dynasty. For the first time in history, all of China was ruled by foreign conquerors. Kublai Khan ruled from a magnificent capital city. This city was called Khanbalik. It was located where modern Beijing stands today. During Kublai Khan's rule, a famous visitor came to China. His name was Marco Polo. Marco Polo was an Italian merchant. He traveled to China along the Silk Road. He spent 17 years in China. He served in the court of Kublai Khan. When Marco Polo returned to Europe and wrote about China, Europeans were astonished. China was far wealthier, more sophisticated, and more advanced than anything they had imagined. Marco Polo's book inspired generations of European explorers, including a man named Christopher Columbus, who was searching for a sea route to China when he accidentally discovered the Americas. The Mongol Yuan dynasty eventually weakened. Rebellions broke out across China. A man of humble origins rose to lead the rebellion. His name was Zhu Yuanzhang. Zhu Yuanzhang was born into a desperately poor peasant family. As a child, he was so poor that he became a beggar to survive. Then he became a monk. Then he joined a rebellion. Through extraordinary determination and military genius, he rose to become the leader. In 1368, he drove the Mongols out of China. He founded the Ming dynasty. He became the Hongwu Emperor. The Ming dynasty was determined to restore Chinese greatness after Mongol rule. They rebuilt China's economy, agriculture, and population. China grew wealthy and powerful again. The Ming dynasty is famous for two extraordinary achievements. The first is Zheng He's great voyages. The Yongle Emperor, the third emperor of the Ming dynasty, organized an extraordinary fleet.
This fleet was commanded by a brilliant admiral named Zheng He. Zheng He's fleet was enormous. It included ships much larger than anything Europeans were building at that time. The largest ships were called treasure ships. They were about 130 meters long. Compare this to Columbus's Santa Maria, which was only about 20 meters long. Between 1405 and 1433, Zheng He led 7 great voyages. He sailed to Southeast Asia, India, Arabia, and all the way down the east coast of Africa. He brought back exotic animals, including giraffes, for the Chinese emperor. He established trade relations with dozens of countries. These voyages showed that China had the technology and capability to explore the entire world. But after Zheng He, China stopped these voyages. The new emperors turned inward. They closed China's doors. This decision had enormous consequences for world history. Instead of China, it was European countries that went on to explore and colonize the world. The second great achievement of the Ming Dynasty was the Great Wall. The concept of walls in northern China was very old. Earlier dynasties had built walls, but during the Ming Dynasty, the wall was massively expanded and rebuilt. In the early 17th century, a people from Manchuria, northeast of China, grew powerful. They were called the Manchu. In 1644, the Ming Dynasty was weakened by internal rebellions and corruption. The Manchu took this opportunity. They invaded China and took Beijing. They established the Qing Dynasty. Like the Mongols before them, the Manchu were foreign conquerors of China. But, like the Mongols, they also adopted much of Chinese culture. They governed China using traditional Chinese methods. They followed Confucian principles. They maintained the examination system. The Qing Dynasty greatly expanded China's territory. It incorporated Tibet, Xinjiang, and Mongolia into the Chinese Empire. China under the Qing Dynasty was larger than it had ever been before. 2 Qing emperors in particular stood out as great rulers. The Kangxi Emperor ruled for 61 years. He was one of the longest reigning monarchs in world history. He was a scholar, a military leader, and a wise administrator. The Qianlong Emperor also ruled for a very long time. Under the Qianlong Emperor, China was at the peak of its power and wealth. China was the largest economy in the world. China produced approximately 1/3 of the entire world's economic output. But during the later Qing period, China began to fall behind the West. While China was looking inward, Europe was going through the Industrial Revolution. Steam engines, factories, railways, and modern weapons were transforming European power. China still relied on old traditions and old methods. Then came the Opium Wars. European traders, especially British traders, wanted to sell goods in China. But China produced everything it needed and wanted very little from Europe. The trade was very imbalanced. Europe paid enormous amounts of silver to buy Chinese goods. Then British traders discovered that they could sell opium to Chinese people. Opium is a highly addictive drug. Millions of Chinese people became addicted to opium. This was devastating for Chinese society. When the Chinese government tried to stop the opium trade, Britain declared war. This was the first Opium War. China was defeated. The outcome was humiliating for China. China was forced to sign unfair treaties. China had to give Hong Kong to Britain. China had to open its ports to foreign trade. China had to pay enormous amounts of money to Britain. More defeats followed. More unfair treaties followed. More foreign powers took Chinese territory. China was carved up like a melon, as the Chinese people said. This period of humiliation lasted from approximately 1839 to 1949. Chinese people call it the Century of Humiliation. It left a deep wound in the Chinese national consciousness. This wound influences Chinese politics and national feeling even today. The Qing dynasty was weakened by military defeats, foreign humiliation, and internal rebellions. One of the most devastating internal conflicts was the Taiping Rebellion. This rebellion lasted from 1850 to 1964. It was one of the deadliest conflicts in all of human history. Estimates suggest that 20 to 30 million people died. The Qing government survived the rebellion but was severely weakened. Western powers increased their influence in China. Reform movements tried to modernize China but failed. Then, in 1908, a 2-year-old boy became emperor. His name was Pu Yi. 3 years later, in 1911, a revolution broke out across China. The revolution was led by a man named Sun Yat-sen. On February 12, 1912, the 6-year-old emperor Pu Yi abdicated. His regent signed the papers of abdication. The Qing dynasty was finished. The Chinese Empire was finished. 3,000 years of imperial rule ended. China became a republic, but the republic was weak and divided. Warlords fought each other for control. Japan invaded Chinese territory. Civil war tore China apart. During the chaos of the early 20th century, 2 major political forces competed for control of China. The first was the Nationalist Party. This was led by a general named Chiang Kai-shek. The second was the Communist Party. It was led by a man named Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong was born into a peasant family in 1993. He became convinced that communism was the answer to China's problems. He spent decades building the Communist Party and its army. For years, the nationalists and communists fought each other. They also both fought the Japanese, who invaded China in 1937. The Japanese invasion was brutal. Millions of Chinese people died. After World War II ended in 1945, the civil war between nationalists and communists resumed. On October 1, 1949, Mao Zedong stood in Tiananmen Square in Beijing. He announced the founding of the People's Republic of China. China was now a communist country. Under Mao, China went through enormous changes. Land was taken from rich landlords and given to poor peasants. Industries were nationalized. China aligned itself with the Soviet Union. But Mao also made terrible decisions that caused enormous suffering. In 1958, Mao launched a campaign called the Great Leap Forward. He wanted to rapidly transform China from an agricultural country into an industrial power. He forced people to give up their individual farms and join large collective farms. He redirected millions of farmers into making steel instead of growing food. The results were catastrophic. Food production collapsed. Between 1959 and 1961, a devastating famine killed an estimated 15 to 55 million people. This is one of the deadliest famines in human history. Then, in 1966, Mao launched another devastating campaign. This was called the Cultural Revolution. Mao wanted to eliminate old Chinese culture, traditions, and capitalist thinking. Young people organized into groups called Red Guards. They attacked teachers, professors, and intellectuals. They destroyed ancient temples, art, and books. Millions of people were persecuted, imprisoned, and killed. China's culture and education system were severely damaged. The Cultural Revolution lasted approximately 10 years. It ended when Mao died in 1976. After Mao's death, a new leader emerged. His name was Deng Xiaoping. Deng Xiaoping was a pragmatic and flexible thinker. He made famous statements like, "It doesn't matter if a cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice," meaning what matters is what works, not ideology. Deng Xiaoping began China's economic reforms. He allowed some private enterprise. He opened China to foreign investment. He created special economic zones where foreign businesses could operate. The results were extraordinary. China's economy began to grow at a remarkable pace. Hundreds of millions of Chinese people were lifted out of poverty. This is one of the greatest reductions in poverty in human history. China became the factory of the world. Chinese products were sold everywhere. China became the second largest economy in the world. Some economists predict China will become the largest economy in the world in the coming decades. In 1997, Hong Kong was returned to China by Britain. In 1999, Macau was returned to China by Portugal. China also gained enormous international influence. It became a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. It hosted the Olympic Games in Beijing in 2008, a moment of enormous national pride for the Chinese people. Today, China is one of the most powerful countries in the world. China has the second largest economy in the world. China is the world's largest manufacturer. China is the world's largest exporter. China has built extraordinary infrastructure. China has the world's largest high-speed railway network. China's bullet trains travel at over 300 kilometers per hour. China has made remarkable advances in technology. Chinese technology companies compete with the biggest companies in the world. China has lifted approximately 800 million people out of extreme poverty since 1978. This is the largest poverty reduction in human history. China has a population of approximately 1.4 billion people. That is roughly 1 in every 5 people on Earth. China's cities are enormous and modern. Shanghai, Beijing, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou are among the largest and most modern cities in the world. China is also investing heavily in space exploration. Chinese astronauts have traveled to space. China has landed a rover on the far side of the moon. China has sent a rover to Mars. But China also faces challenges. Environmental pollution is a serious problem. The gap between the rich and poor is large. Political freedoms are limited. China's relationship with the rest of the world is complex. China is deeply connected to the global economy, but China also has tensions with many countries over political and territorial issues. The story of China is not finished. It is still being written.